This week, our veneer project is put on an immediate hold so we can fix a leaking fuel tank.
I'm Sid, and these are my best friends. My mom, Kim, my dad, Ty, and my sister, Maddie, who before starting her own adventure, joined us in rocking out a state-of-the-art refit on our floating home. Now, we're ready to set sail to die with memories, not dreams, and live dauntless.
Okay, guys. All I can say is Whiskey Tango Foxtrot on this one. I literally am gonna lose my mind. I love my boat. I do. And I did say that when we sell her, she's gonna be sail ready. And this boat's making sure that I keep my promise. So obviously we're doing all the veneer work here. And I'm just getting ready to move into the porthole to do the utility room and just wrap this whole deal up, hopefully here in the next 10, 14 days. And this morning, Sid comes into the salon and says, "It smells like chemicals in here." I'm like, "Yeah, you gotta be crazy." So I go outside, take the dog out, do my thing, and I come back and I'm like, "It smells like diesel. Why does it smell like diesel in the boat?" I'm like, "Oh no." So I honestly have no idea what's going on at this point. I threw a couple rags or the oil absorbers down in the bilge. The fuel did make it to the bilge, not a lot, and I was able to absorb it, and nothing pumped overboard, so we're good there. I pulled the fuse on that, and I've got a high water alarm that's still there in case anything drastic happens, but the actual bilge pump is inactive. So I tried to use the fuel transfer pump that I have, but it just doesn't pull enough head to be able to get the fuel from the tank all the way up to the deck into a blue barrel that I've got to try to pump it into, so I can see what's going on with the tank. All the fittings look fine on top, but yeah, I'm gonna open it up and I'm going to suck all the fuel out and pull the tank out and see if there's something that's on the side or the bottom, but we're gonna find out. And damn it. But I'm glad it happened to me, because I would hate for something like this to happen to somebody when they buy the boat. So yeah, here we go. Another boat project just to make sure, and I'll take you along and you can see what I see. So here we go. All right, it was noisy, like really noisy with the pump running, so you couldn't hear a damn thing. But what I've done is I've bought this MILWAUKEE pump. It's freaking awesome. They claim it's for water, so I got online, of course, into the University of YouTube and looked around, and there's a ton of mechanics and field people that are using this for oil, diesel, pumping out contaminated tanks, which is gasoline, all kinds of stuff. And it has a nitrile impeller in it, so it is not going to be affected by any sort of fuel or solvents. And yeah, everybody freaking loves them. And it's cordless, which is really cool. So I'll show you what that looks like here, but really I need to show you what's in the bottom of the tank. We run Raycors on, which of course filters everything out, and not only water fuel separates, but filters any debris or diesel bug or anything like that that's out of there. And we don't get any of that. Our Raycors are crystal clear. But I look at the bottom of the tank and there's like this layer of film, like, I don't know, can you see that? Like, an eighth of an inch, less than an eighth of an inch. It looks really gross. So first, here's this cool pump. Check this bad boy out. Intake and outgoing. I bought a plug or a cap for it, and then I adapted just to a cheap garden hose, because of course this is going to be a temporary solution. I wouldn't normally transfer fuel in a garden hose, but this is going to be here. You can see the impeller through the glass. It's actually glass. Yeah, check this out. You put all different kinds of batteries or sizes of batteries in there, and this one's just about dead. It runs up, down, left, right, so I actually had it run up like so, up on end. And then I had a dishwasher connection, believe it or not, which is a 3/4 inch pipe hose thread, which is what this is, to with a 90 degree and a 1/4 inch PEX fitting. So that PEX fitting, you know, for fluid and what have you. And I got to thinking, hey, I'll be able to get down in the nooks and crannies of the tank to vacuum this stuff out, which did work really well. And I think I can hook it up to the engines and use it to pump my oil out. That's a good idea. So let me turn you around here. All right. Let's see if I can shine my flashlight in there. Look at that. So you can see where the fuel had been sitting over the last few months. This guy was actually all the way full before we left Georgia. And I pumped out about 15 gallons plus the probably gallon that ended up towards the bilge that I was able to soak up. But yeah, isn't that gross? Obviously a little bit of diesel in the bottom there. So I'm gonna figure out how I can get this cleaned out. I think what I might do is reverse the pump and use that little 1/4 inch hose and suck fuel out of the big barrel that I put it in and use it as a sprayer, so I can break that up and then slosh it around inside of there, and then I can reverse it again and suck it back out and filter back through the Raycor or dispose of it, and hopefully get all that crap out of there. So here we go. I'm going to disconnect the tank and see what's underneath of it. All right, here is the tank. And here is the access port that I just showed you, generator hookups, which we don't use anymore. And then there's, I think, some fuel transfer that goes from one side to the other. But let's pull the tank out and see what happens. All right, I'm filming this on my phone, and it's going to be a little jerky. I apologize for the bad audio and well, the poor cinematography skills. But Sid's not feeling well, and she's actually going to the hospital. And I think everything's gonna be okay, but Kim's with her, and so I'm on my own. They told me I need to stay, and we'll see how she's doing.
So I wanted to come to my happy place to talk about this, and it's not the most glamorous situation, but I was having a women's health problem, and everything that I read said that I should seek medical attention. So that's what Mom and I did. We went to the hospital, and they recognized that there was an abnormality, but I'm a healthy young woman, and all of my tests came back with flying colors. There's nothing medically wrong with me. So they prescribed me some medicine that should help clear up any unusual happenings, and I'm all set, good to go. So yeah, I'm healthy, I'm happy, everything is great. So now we can get back to helping Dad with this fuel tank.
In the meantime, I'm really just going to try to keep you guys up to speed about what I'm doing and how I'm going to fix it, and if this happens to you, what you can do. Let's figure it out together, okay? All right, so I've got to take these bolts out here because these straps, it's bracketed there and then down there, and this has to get taken apart and open up on both sides so that the tank can come out. There's lifting points there, and there's a lifting point there. I can't imagine the tank is that heavy, this amount of aluminum. I did a rough calculation from welding up aluminum tanks in the past, and I think it probably weighs somewhere in the neighborhood with all the fittings of 40 pounds, maybe 50, not bad. So the biggest challenge is going to be getting the fuel lines off the actual fill intake, because it's really close to the wall, and there's only a couple inches. And so this is the vent, this is the fuel fill, and I've got to get this off of there, break that loose, and take this tank and get it up and out away from that. All of these connections will be simple. Those just come off with the hose clamps, and then of course I'll disconnect. There's actual spade connectors here. I'll disconnect the fuel sensor. Discovered something. I went to try to take this loose, and the bolt actually this isn't tight. See how it is over here. yeah, it's not. That's not cool, Edna. I don't know why they move. Oh, this one moves a lot. Look at that. So that tells me that this tank may be shifting and I may be getting some chafe underneath of here. So, and we're in this rolling anchorage for a couple months, and even at the dock, it's way better than it is on the anchorage, but this boat does shift and move. We're pitching and rolling right now. I don't know if you can actually hear the water outside or see me like swaying back and forth, but I'm moving, so it's kind of hard. That's just the current. Isn't that crazy loud? And it rocks the boat, especially when the boats come by. Sometimes there's 2 or 3 foot rollers that come through here, and the dock breaks it up a little bit, but not much. Back to work. Let's get this out of here. So the tank can't lift straight up. It's got to come out. If you can see, because obviously that fitting is there, I'm not going to be able to pull the tank this direction, right? So I've got to roll the tank out. But all of the lift points are down the center. So when I lift it up, it just binds. So what I did was, I went and got the suction cup that we used for the window, and I sanded around it, because there's a little bit of just oxidation, corrosion, whatever on the outside of this nasty crap. It just pulled loose. So what I did was, here, I'll show you. Stand on this side, lean on this side, and then I pump it. And now it creates a vacuum, and I can lift the tank up. So I'm going to wrestle that for a minute, and then I'll let you know when I get it close to getting out. All right, so what I'm going to do is, I still can't get it to lift up. And the hose, I was able to get the fuel inlet loose, which is great. And it's kind of wiggling through the wall a little bit. So I'm going to go into the engine compartment, and I'm going to, what the hell am I going to do? I'm going to go into the engine compartment. I'm going to try to grab that hose and twist it and pull it back. See if I can get it off the tank. Wish me luck. I won. I got that big out. Oh. And they had to jump on it to get it in there, because it was everything I could do to get it out. I've been working on it for 3 hours. And I look at the bottom of this and see where the culprit is. I was able to peek underneath when I got it halfway out and see what looked like, well, I could see where the diesel's coming out. It's coming out of the bottom of the tank. And my suspicion is they put this tank on rubber pads, and because we saw that move, the brackets move, the brackets just hold it down from the top, and it sits on a plywood structure, and I think that slipped off or something got underneath of there, and it moved and it wore into the tank. I'm not sure, but here, let me show you. Look at that on the bottom. You can see where the straps were, and it looks like, yep, got a pinhole, and you can see where that strap was crooked and it was not sitting on the bracket. I'm going to clean up my mess, and I'm going to sneak a tarp underneath of this and put the cover plate back over, the cover block off over where the tank went. So I'll use the bed as a work table, and because from what I understand is these don't come out of the cabins unless you cut the fittings off. They don't fit outside, and looking at what I can see here, I think that's absolutely correct. Okay, I found the culprit, and it is the sections where the tank was sitting actually on the wood. So I'm gonna flip the camera around, and I'm gonna show you where I believe the culprit is coming from, and how I'm gonna fix it. So, all right, so here is the bottom of the tank. I've sanded the whole bottom of the tank, and when you sand it, you know, there's a little bit of corrosion here and there, but what you're seeing is this line, and if you get up close, you can actually see the size of the pits and the corrosion. And this is from it sitting on that watered surface. So to put this tank back in again and get a new one, you'd have to cut the fittings off and then re-weld them in the boat. And that just seems stupid. So I think coming up with a more permanent solution is going to be a good way to go. And the best way to prevent corrosion on this tank is to just make sure that the outside is protected and not leave it as raw aluminum. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to epoxy fill with a metal repair putty that's designed for this type of applications for fuel tanks, and I'm going to fill that in, and then I'm going to go back and seal the whole outside of the tank with a trowelable epoxy, and then I will sand it, and then I'll put a tank coating over top of it to protect the tank from any further or future corrosion. So that's the plan, and I got my work ahead of me, so I'm going to go and start mixing stuff up. All right. I just had a couple spots here, and then a spot there, and a little strip right here. But then I had extra epoxy, so I just smeared it everywhere just to cover the entire around the areas. So what I decided to do is, it's just a couple little tiny pits here and there. Those are filled with this epoxy that's made for this. It's set up, but it's not cured. I'm gonna wait for tomorrow, and then I'm gonna come back in and I'm gonna sand it. And I think I'm gonna put just one layer of glass on the bottom. All right, guys, it is the next morning. Early. Slack tide, so we're not getting banged around in here. And I want to show you what the tank looks like right before I sand it. So here's the repair. There was a little bit of pitting here, a little bit of pitting right here, and a little bit of pitting here, and I just had extra, so I smeared it everywhere. And then I actually threw some fairing on the side of the tank, just because I figured, hey, why not? I had to sand the whole thing anyway. And yeah, so I'm gonna sand this up really quick and get it prepped, and then I'm gonna go over to the 50 and get my epoxy and some cloth, and then I'll come back and I'm actually just gonna put a layer of glass on the bottom of the tank, because I really don't like the fact that this tank that's 137 gallons actually just sits on the edges of 3 pieces of plywood. I think that's ridiculous. So I'm gonna put the glass on it, and I'm actually gonna put a piece of plywood down in that opening so that the tank is not only reinforced on the bottom so there's no abrasion capabilities on the edges, but that it's sitting on like a flat surface, and I'll then put the rubber straps or protectors on top of the plywood so that it just further protects the tank. Since aluminum tanks are supposedly supposed to last around 10 years. Well, that just seems ridiculous, and this is why. It's because they're just exposed on the outside to humidity, salty air environments, God forbid water splashes in from when you're on passage, you forget to close a hatch, something like that. So this way the tank can be sealed, and it will be better and be intact for hopefully 20 or 30 years. So there you go. This is a 3-to-1 ratio. And so we're gonna do 18 ounces of resin and then 4 ounces of hardener. And we're gonna use a medium on this. So I've got some time to work with it. And I just made a little bit of a mess.
That's what the plastic's there for, though.
That's right. So mix this up. I already have the glass cut and laid out on the bottom of the tank. I'm hoping that this 24 ounces of resin should be enough. But if I have to come back and mix more, I've got time to do so. I'm just putting a thick layer of 1808 biaxial with chop on it on the bottom of the tank, just as an abrasion preventer, because obviously the tank's repaired, but it'll just make sure that this never happens again. And if the tank does move, it's gonna have to wear through a ton of resin and a ton of glass before it ever even gets to the aluminum. So I think that's gonna work out just good, just great. Get a thorough mix for about 2 minutes, scraping the walls and the bottom of the cup to make sure everything's completely incorporated. And you can see the streaks inside of there. As soon as those streaks go away and the resin clears up, there's no bubbles. You know that it is not bubbles, there's no streaks. You can tell that it's completely mixed. No more streaks, so we know it's now fully incorporated. I'm going to keep mixing for another minute just to make sure, and then I'll be able to go apply it to the glass. All right guys, from yesterday with that epoxy repair, I've now got everything sanded and wiped down with acetone, and so it's ready to start doing the wet out. So this stuff's kind of a bear to wet out. Chop strand is with epoxy. It really likes polyester resin, but we're not going to do any of this in polyester because epoxy is mo better. So I'm just going to do a wet. Be very careful because I have not put any masking down. I'm living on the edge. Alright, so wet out. Really just want to make sure I get the edges over here. And then I'll wet the rest of it out from the top. Turn it over. There we go. I already think that this is not going to be enough. And I'll just do one of these at a time, and I'll come back here in a few minutes and I'll show you what it looks like when it's all wet out.
Yes, we've seen lots of fiberglass being wet out in our day.
Yeah, we don't need to watch this. I like to use the spreader because it just allows me to work it into the glass versus using a brush, and I can reuse it because I can just clean it. Brushes are a one-time deal, and since I'm not trying to get into any nooks and crannies or get into any inside radiuses, I'm not really worried about using a brush. So, and of course this is all going to get an epoxy coat, so if a little bit of it drips down, I can scuff it before we paint the epoxy barrier on the outside of it, so it's not that big of a deal. All right, I'll see you in a few minutes.
Sounds good. Bye.
Bye. All right, guys, I am out here getting ready to mix some INTERLUX Protect 2000E. Yeah, 2000E. It is a epoxy barrier coat and metal repair sealant product. You can use it on bare metal, you can use it to repair above and below the water line, all different kinds of stuff. I'm going to use it, of course, to seal and protect the tank and cover the bottom of the fiberglass that I just put on the bottom. Now we are at a thumbprint level with the fiberglass and epoxy, and if you guys don't know what that means that you push a thumbprint into the epoxy. What you're going to get is your thumbprint, but nothing comes off on your finger, and it's still a little tacky and sticky. Or if you use a glove, you can push in, and when you pick it back up, it doesn't stick to the glove, and you can hear a little snap. I'm just to that point. I've got 20 minutes of induction time, which is when you mix up an epoxy product, you've got to let it sit for 20 minutes for it to cook. I'm going to mix this up, and I'll catch it down in the starboard or port aft cabin when I'm painting it on. All right, see you in a second. Stuff's pretty noxious, so I'm going to open some windows here in just a few minutes, and I'm going to try to get 3 coats on today, but I should be able to get all the way down to kind of see this perimeter where the radius stops. I'll be able to get that all the way around, and then when I turn it right side up, I'll be able to do that top radius and get the top of the tank. So here we go. All right, so I've got the tank coated down to here, and I've coated the glass, obviously, on the bottom. All right, there we go. So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put a second coat on. This went on very, very thick, and it's time because here is the fingerprint test. I can put my fingerprint in it, but it doesn't come off on my hand. So that means it's ready. We'll get a chemical bond from this layer to the next layer.
Join us next week when we finish the top of the tank before wrestling it back into its place and polishing the fuel.